Are here for the Field of 60. Today, we are bringing you another episode in our Off the Carousel series, where we will be joined by each and every new head coach to the Division One ranks. There are almost 60 of them. We're going to be rolling these out a couple of days throughout the month of May and the month of June. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you like this interview, don't be afraid to tap that like button. That stuff really does help our channel and help our presence on YouTube. It helps more people like you find this content. And since I have you guys here, make sure that you check out our Instagram and TikTok pages. We are going to be pumping out more unique content over there throughout the summer heading into next season. Like, for example, did you know that Penny Hardaway was shot when he was a player in college? I bet you didn't know that. There are more stories like that on those pages. The links are in the description below. So now, without further ado, let's get into another edition of Off the Carousel.
Riley Davis here with the Field of 68, and on today's episode of Off the Carousel, I'm joined by new East Carolina coach Mike Schwartz. Schwartz comes to ECU from Rick Barnes' staff at Tennessee, where he served as the associate head coach over the last few seasons, and we're excited to have him on the program today, so thanks for being on, Coach. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Riley. I appreciate you having me. Doing fantastic. We've made it to the month of May after a pretty hectic first 5 to 6 weeks, but doing awesome and glad to be joining you.
Yeah, well, thanks. I can only imagine how hectic it is making the move, not just changing locations with your family and everything, but also taking on this title as the head coach for the first time in your career. But before we get into that a little bit, there's one question that I know the people out there are waiting on, and it's, have you had the barbecue in Greenville yet? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I have had it, and we've had multiple different restaurants that have all been fantastic. Coach Barnes let me know right away going there how good it was, and I had been fortunate enough actually to go through recruiting a few times in the eastern part of the state, and we had stopped at a couple of his favorite places, Parker's Barbecue being one of them. But honestly, I tell you, Riley, there's about 3 or 4 places we've been as a staff. We went there the first 3 nights that we were there. We went as a coaching staff every single night to the same place, but there it is really delicious, to be honest with you. And I don't see us stopping going there anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm a North Carolinian, so I'm very passionate about barbecue. Love the Eastern style. Big fan of the vinegar based. And I'm in Durham, and there's some good places here, but I know there's nothing quite like being in the actual eastern part of the state in Greenville, and had some decent to good barbecue in Knoxville, Tennessee before, where I know you've been at. But
yeah. Loved it. Great out there too but like you said, there is something authentic about it. And the unique thing, Riley, is there's probably 3 or 4 different restaurants that are all really good. And they all have that specialty, like you said, whether it's the barbecue, the pulled pork, or the pulled chicken, or another one just opened up the other night and brought brisket to it. So it's been good. And the staff likes it when we use it for official visits too, which has been really cool.
There you go. Can't beat that. Well, as much as I could talk about barbecue, I do want to hear some about your coaching journey. So we'll transition the questions a little bit. But first, I wanted to say on my behalf and on behalf of the Field of 68, congrats on landing your first head coaching job. It's an awesome milestone. And just wanted to ask how you would describe your emotions upon starting this new role.
Well, it is something that I was so excited about for a long time. In terms of hopefully having an opportunity to do it. And you never take it for granted, Riley. You never just assume it's going to happen. There's different points. This will be starting my 24th season of Division I coaching in some capacity. So you never assumed it was going to happen, but you always were very hungry for it to happen and excited and looking forward to the opportunity if and when it did. And so when I got the opportunity this spring, late March, and when the NCAA tournament completed for us at Tennessee, the best way to describe it is I look at it like a opportunity of a lifetime. I really do. And it just feel so fortunate to have this chance to be here as the head coach. And it's so much bigger than just me having this chance. There's so much that goes into it. But the best way to say it is I just feel very fortunate and look at it like the opportunity of a lifetime. And that's how I'm going to approach it every day and every morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did this process unfold with you getting the offer to come coach at ECU?
Yeah, it happened fairly quickly. We were in the SEC tournament, and that was my first contact with East Carolina and with John Gilbert, the AD, and I had a chance to speak with him. I think it was after our first game in the SEC tournament. We were getting ready to go play in the semifinals the next night, and then from there it happened pretty quick. We had a semifinal game. We were fortunate enough to beat Kentucky that night. Then we went into Sunday and we played in the SEC championship against Texas A&M. One of the all-time great memories that I will have in coaching. Winning an SEC championship there was just so cool to be there. Most importantly for Coach Barnes and for the University of Tennessee and the fan base, but all the players, to share that with them. And when I arrived back into Knoxville that night, John, the athletic director at ECU, John Gilbert, and Caroline Bevillard, the senior women's associate AD, had driven to Knoxville, and I had a chance to meet with them face to face, and basically got right off the plane and went right to a hotel, and we met for about four or so hours about it. And then it's almost surreal looking back on it, just thinking about how it played out. But yeah, that was it. It was basically the end of the SEC tournament is when it all started.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure the Vols fans will always be able to look back on that run you mentioned as well, with that being one of your greatest memories, because it wasn't that you just, beat Texas A&M in the championship. Y'all punished them, a team hungry to get in the tournament. And that's a great way to go out with one of your final memories there. But, you mentioned you've been in this profession now 24 years. And as you look back at this whole career that you've formed, like through coaching, how did you first even get into coaching?
Well, it's funny that it happened. I always knew I wanted to be a coach. And when I first went and played Division II basketball at a high school, I really wanted to chase the dream of playing Division I. And through a very unique process that we could probably spend a whole nother interview speaking about and the conversation talking about, I had the chance to walk on for Coach Barnes at Texas my senior year. And after my senior year, right after the NCAA tournament, he gave me an opportunity to begin working towards coaching. I mean, literally the day after we lost in the first round to Purdue in Boston. And the next day when we got back to Austin, I was in the film room watching film, and, he had just given me that opportunity to be around. And so that whole spring, I had a chance to just kind of get in it a little bit. And I knew I wanted to do it, but there was obviously, as you know, and you've spoken with so many coaches, there is no path that is guaranteed. There is no direction where you say, if you do this, you're going to be able to do this. So I just was doing it open-ended, not knowing where it would lead to. And that summer I had a chance to stay in Austin all summer. I just graduated, and long story short, he gave me the opportunity to be the first graduate assistant at the University of Texas under him. And so that is where the GA program, graduate assistant program, started for him at Texas.
Wow.
And I got a chance to do that, and just ran from it from there.
So you were the first ever at Texas, or the first ever under Barnes, or?
You know what? I definitely know, because he has made mention of this, that I was the first graduate assistant for him at the University of Texas. Whether he had one at Clemson or Providence, I just don't know from that, so I wouldn't want to speak of that. But he has mentioned it many times that I was fortunate enough to be the first GA for him at the University of Texas. The year I played for him, we didn't have a GA, so transitioning from that spring to that summer into the fall, it was, again, I guess I could look back and that was really the opportunity of a lifetime to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like Coach Barnes has played a pretty huge role and a big influence on you just in your entire coaching career. But as you look back specifically to these last few years on staff at Tennessee, is there what's the biggest lesson you learned about coaching from Rick Barnes?
Boy, if I could just put that into one thing, it would, that would be really difficult. I owe him everything, to be honest with you, Riley. I owe him everything. He's a father figure to me. He's the ultimate professional mentor to me, but he's also a personal mentor to me. And that just was, I've been lucky enough to be with him in so many stages, as a player, as a young coach, I had a chance to be the video coordinator for him for 2 years. After I left and went to Long Beach State for a year, I came back, and it was a year we went to the Final Four, and then we went to the Sweet 16. So I was a little growing, but still young. And then I went away for many years, and then I came back as a much more experienced coach and had a chance to learn from him over the last 6 years. So there's so many things throughout the course of my basketball career, prior to coaching and then now to have this opportunity to be a head coach, that it's just so much that I've learned from him. But one of the things that pertained to this opportunity at ECU was he always told me, he said, Mike, what's more important than anything is who you work for and who you work with. He said that is really as important as anything. And I've learned so many small lessons from him in terms of obviously the basketball side and program management side and things that I will do everything I can to replicate at ECU. But the thing that got me so excited about ECU was John Gilbert and the leadership there in terms of who you work for and who you work with. And he always said that to me. And it's something that even makes me feel more fortunate about to have this chance at East Carolina.
Yeah, and I think it's clear, even looking at your tenure before Tennessee, you've had success at pretty much every stop you've been at Tulsa, at Fresno State, at Miami. And I know especially these past 5 years, I read that Coach Barnes appointed you as his defensive coordinator and sort of the architect behind that stingy Volunteers defense. And I wanted to read a few numbers for the viewers and the listeners. So for those that didn't know, under your tenure as the defensive coordinator, the Vols ranked top 10 in Ken Palm's adjusted defensive efficiency. In 3 of those 5 seasons, they ranked top 20 in 2-point percentage and in defensive 2-point percentage, also in 3 of those 5 seasons. And UT ranked top 30 in block percentage in all of those seasons. And so with all that being said, Coach, what is it about your defensive schemes as you look to ECU? What is it about your defensive scheme that makes points at the basket so hard to come by and that makes life so difficult for your opposition?
Well, the first thing I'd say to that is obviously Coach Barnes' mentality, and you asked about what I've learned from him, and he's always been a defensive-minded coach all the way back to George Mason, from Mason to Providence, Clemson, Texas to Tennessee. So that's always been at the core of who Coach Barnes is, with other things, but defense has always been paramount for him. So I was just very fortunate to be in that role and have an opportunity to run with that, and where he trusted me with saying what his vision is, we're going to execute it or attempt to teach and execute it every day. So I feel very fortunate for that. The other thing is we had great players at Tennessee. We had players that were able to not only mentally execute everything we wanted to do in terms of the schemes and what we wanted, but physically we're able to do things like whether it's pressure the basketball, whether it's challenge shots at the rim, what we called confrontations, whether it's make fix-it plays where things don't always work the way we want them to as coaches, but players' athleticism or effort is able to fix those things. So, the players and Coach Barnes' vision and everything played such a huge role. But with that being said, at ECU and what we established at Tennessee during that time frame was we are going to try to do everything we can do to make the offense uncomfortable. And that's no guarantee we can do that, but it will be emphasized and it will be one of our goals that we want to make the ball uncomfortable. It is really important for us to try and make the opposing point guard uncomfortable, where during that 40 minutes or whatever it takes that game, that they come out of it saying they knew it was a challenge for them. It was a challenge for them, whether it was initiating offense, whether it was plays at the basket, things moving the basketball, challenging passes, challenging catches. And that's not the technical aspect of the defensive scheme, because there are some very, what we call heat points in the defense where we want to make it more difficult for the offense. But in general, it is a 94-foot man-to-man defense that is going to try and disrupt and make the opposing point guard and the ball uncomfortable. And that's kind of the foundation of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned making the other team uncomfortable. There's one really vivid memory I have of watching UT basketball. I want to say it was in the 2018-2019 season when the Vols played Gonzaga in Phoenix, Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, just two physical, just behemoth type dudes. And I just remember watching guys like Rui Hachimura and Petrushev on Gonzaga. You could tell by the end of the game this look of exhaustion on their face. That's like, I got to keep going against just these absolute studs.
Well, you know what? And that was such an awesome game. I mean, that's another great game. They were ranked number 1 in the country. We're in Phoenix, like you said, and it was. We had another player on that team, that Yves Pons, that ended up being the SEC Defensive Player of the Year the next year, his junior season, but he was a sophomore that year. And yeah, I mean, such obviously Gonzaga and Coach Few and their program, so such a great program and so many talented players on the court that day. But you kind of alluded to something, Riley, and it is something that we want to do. We have this mentality, at least at Tennessee we did, and we are going to do everything we can to put a carbon copy of that with the defense at ECU, is we want to try and wear the opposing point guard down. We want to try and wear the opposing team down for that game. I don't think anything we do in that game is going to carry over to the next game, and anything that would, but that's got to be our goal. And the one thing that we are going to look at it like at ECU is this, that there's a lot of varying offensive talent levels and so much to putting the ball in the basket, great shooters, great finishers, just natural ability. But the one thing that you should be able to do is, whether it's in the SEC, the AAC, a different conference, is the defensive effort, the defensive mindset should be exactly the same. And that's going to be our approach. So whether it's Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, and Yves Pons physically trying to impose their will on a team defensively and trying to disrupt the other team's offense, whoever it may be in a Pirate uniform, we feel we should be able to demand and have the same expectations. And we're going to do that. And that's just going to be at the core of our program.
Yeah, that's what I would definitely say to all the ECU fans out there, is you got a physical defense to look forward to, and one that it sounds like you definitely have the vision that you're gonna implement in Greenville. And I got to ask you mentioning Yves Pons, is there any type of player that you've like that maybe fits that frame of players you're saying, man, now that they're in our staff, they're in our development program, like the AAC better watch out?
Well, I wouldn't say that in terms of anybody having to watch out. I think we got to build this thing right now. We got to get our culture right. We got to get our program right, our defensive mentality right. But we're really excited about the 5 to 6 guys that have stayed on, that decided that they wanted to be a part of it. And then we're really excited about the 7 players that have signed so far. We do think, we went out knowing how we want to play defense, knowing what kind of offensive game plan we want to have in terms of transition and playing the style of play that we want as a coaching staff. So we obviously tried to build a roster that's conducive to that. And athleticism and explosiveness on both ends of the floor is something that goes hand in hand with that. So we are excited about some of the pieces that are there, that not only whether it's returning or new guys coming in, but I'll be honest with you, Riley, we haven't had a chance. We only had an opportunity to work for 4 weeks, and it was not X's and O's based. It really wasn't, just to be totally frank with you. It was 4 weeks of workouts that was much more conditioning based, culture based, and what the expectation of our program is going to be when we step in between the lines, and also when you're off the court. And that's really what the 4 weeks that we had an opportunity to be together in Greenville was about. We had to stop workouts 2 weeks ago because of finals. So we really only had the month of April, about 3 weeks in April. So it turned into 4 weeks worth of workouts because we got at the end of the first week that I was there. But, I think the summer is something we're really excited about. We'll get to see individual talent or individual players that could fill roles like that. But if we get someone that's half of what Yves Pons was for at Tennessee in terms of defensively, we're going to be okay.
Well, it sounds like you have quite the culture being built in ECU. Look forward to watching y'all this year. Best of luck the rest of the offseason as you move into your first full season, Coach. So appreciate your time.
Riley, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much. All the best to you.